And I think the three words that sort of, excuse me, just describe me are adventure, catalyst, and storyteller. The ability to adapt, um, individuals and interactions, flexibility. I think all of those things are still valid, and I would call them either agile or improved in the manifesto. But you have to realize that this is a document that is sort of a baseline for things that have happened.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Innovation Road Studio. And today I'm really happy to have a wonderful guest with us for this interview, Jim Highsmith. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you this morning? I guess it's
I'm doing.
afternoon for you, isn't it?
This is night for me. It's around 8:30 p.m. in India.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you very much for joining me for this discussion, Jim. Very briefly, I would like the audiences to know that Jim is one of the co-authors of the Agile Manifesto and the Declaration of Interdependence for project leaders. Um, he doesn't need much introduction, but Jim, how would you like to be introduced?
Well, one of the things that I've been doing is, if I look at the statement on the Agile Manifesto, individual and interactions, they really tell us about the importance of relationships in Agile development. And in that case, who I am is more important than what I've done. So I like to introduce myself a little bit and tell people who I am. And I think the three words that sort of, excuse me, just describe me are adventure, catalyst, and storyteller. So I'm an adventure sports nut, or I was when I was a little younger. I was into mountain climbing and rock climbing and bicycle racing and motorcycle racing and quite a few other sports. And so I really liked uh, what I needed to know about things. So there was a knowledge base. Plus, I experienced some things that were really important in terms of experiencing what I could do and what I couldn't do. And then I applied some of that to particularly the information in my first book, Adaptive Software Development. I compared software development to mountain climbing in that book and looked at the parallels. So, for example, when you go to climb a mountain, you have a plan, but you better be prepared to alter that plan as you go because the weather may change, other things may change. You may find a place that you don't feel comfortable climbing, and so you go around it. So that's one thing. And then I've also brought that kind of adventuresome spirit to my work. So I've had a couple of real pivot points in my career where I changed things substantially. So, for example, going from a big company with a lot of security to a startup. I did that in 1980, and it changed the course of my career forever. The second thing I'd like people to know about me is I'm a catalyst. So I like bringing groups of people together. So I can remember in one company, my title was product manager, but I was really brought in to bring together two factions, the old people in an organization and the new people that have been brought in by a venture capitalist. So it was part of my job to knit those two groups together. So that's always been something that I've been able to do, is to help people in different disciplines understand each other and help people at the team and the supervisor level understand what senior management was doing and why, and vice versa. And then finally, I've evolved into a storyteller. In the mid-90s, when I first started doing presentations, I used a traditional PowerPoint bullet point style of presentation. And now I use almost all graphic images and no bullet points. And I tell stories about things that have happened to me over my career. And I find that that's much more entertaining for people and also gets them where they remember the information. So that's really the three things I would have people know about me: adventure, catalyst, and storytelling.
Wow, that's interesting. We generally introduce as a signatory of Agile Manifesto, but it is interesting to know that you are a storyteller and adventurer as well. So thank you for sharing this with us, Jim. And it has been around 23 years that Agile Manifesto has been incepted. We would like to know your journey pre authoring the manifesto and after authoring the manifesto till now? How has it been, and what are some of the milestones that you would like to share with us?
Well, the thing about the manifesto is it was kind of a culmination of a lot of things that had happened during the 1990s. So during the 1990s, you had the real rise in the use of object-oriented programming. So that was one of the things in that environment. People tended to do more iterative development than in a COBOL structured development environment. So I came up the business side, not really doing much on the OO side. And we sort of met in 1997. I met Martin Fowler in New Zealand. And he and I started corresponding with each other, and he put me in touch with Kent Beck. And Kent and I, in 1999, exchanged manuals, his manuscripts, his extreme programming, and my adaptive software development. And so I sort of developed a lot of relationships in the XP community. I went to more XP conferences than anything else in the early days. And then that sort of coalesced into the Agile Manifesto period. The other thing that was happening during the 1990s that people don't really realize, well, they realize that the internet made a big change. But what they sometimes don't realize is that it made a bigger change than just that. That one of the changes it made was to go from building systems for internal customers to building systems or applications for external use. And everything changed as a result of that. And how you built it gave rise to user interface design, which there really wasn't much done about user interface design in the early years. You just put all the data up on the screen and that was it. But once you got GUI interfaces, it changed a lot. So that was sort of the precursor to the Agile Manifesto. So what did you want to hear about next?
That's pretty interesting, Jim. And if today you have been given a chance, would you like to change anything or update anything about Agile Manifesto?
No.
That still is relevant. Yeah, this is the precise thing that you could say about it.
There's two schools of thought when it comes to the manifesto. One is that it's about the words that were written and it's static, and if it said software development, it meant software development, and that was it. There's another school of thought that thinks that the intent of the Agile Manifesto is that it evolves over time, and I think that's the way it's happened. It's evolved over time. Different people have gotten different things from it, but for example, the Agile Project Leadership Network was formed in the mid-2000s to bring a project management slant to the Agile Manifesto. We wrote our own value statements, our own principle statements. They were a little bit different from the manifesto, but you could derive those from the manifesto. And so I am in the cadre of people who thinks that agility and agile can evolve over time, using the manifesto as a base, but not being locked into it and complete and not learn from it. So I think there's some things, for example, that people misinterpret about the manifesto, and there are probably some things that could be improved in the manifesto. But you have to realize that this is a document that is sort of a baseline for things that have happened. And when we wrote the manifesto, the light methodology community, as it was called at the time, was very, very small. And then the Agile Manifesto, today, the Agile community is huge. And nobody who would listen if somebody said they'd rewritten the manifesto? If the original 17 people rewrote the manifesto, they would say, well, it's just 17 old guys trying to redo something. But if you tried to pick 100 people to rewrite the manifesto, they probably wouldn't get very far. And I don't know how many people would listen to them anyway. So I think we've gone way beyond whether or not we need to rewrite the manifesto. I don't think we could. I don't think we should. I think we just need to evolve from there in directions. For example, the big one right now is, of course, artificial intelligence. And so we need to evolve into ways to incorporate new technologies and either change the methodologies or update the methodologies to fit the new technology situation, which is what software development has always done. When I started software development, the tech stack was too deep. You had the operating system and a compiler, and that was it. And so now they have all kinds of tech stacks for everything, and it's changed a lot. And the software development approaches have changed a lot because of that.
You know what, Jim? What amuses me every time I think of it is, first is it's been 23 years and it still makes sense, the Agile Manifesto. Second is, if today we put 10 people in a room and ask them to come to a consensus, it is so difficult. How 17 of you have laid down the concepts of and the principles of Agile Manifesto. This whole process is very amusing till now for me, but that's a job really well done for the coming years. So thank you for that. And over the years, you would have seen a lot of changes in how Agile is being implemented in different organizations and domains. Could you please share your views on the significance of going back to the basic to move ahead to the future in terms of agile transformation or implementation in organizations?
Well, I'm one that believes that the core values of agility are still valid. Collaboration, the ability to adapt, individuals and interactions, flexibility. I think all of those things are still valid, and I would call them either agile or agility. Some people like to use one word, some people like to use the other. But that's a common base, the ability to sense what's going on in the world, to act on that sense, and then to adapt as a result of that. And I think that little cycle, whether you look at the Agile Manifesto or you look at some of the extensions to the manifesto, are still really important. And so I still think that Agile values and some of the principles are still valid even in today's world. But that said, there need to be some extensions to Agile in terms of new practices or methods that we can put in place that will still fulfill the values of agility, but also fulfill what we need today in terms of moving forward. So I think that what we're trying to do with Back to the Basics is just get people to reflect on those values and see if they're still valid for them, and then try to clear up any misinterpretations that have occurred. So, for example, the old one I like to use is, I still to this day see posts on social media that say Agile says no documentation. But we never said that. And nobody's ever said that, except maybe a couple of people who are kind of extreme people. But the bulk of the community would say that documentation is okay. It's just you document as a result of collaboration as opposed to being in place of collaboration. And so what happened in the old days is you'd have systems analysts who would write the documentation and then threw it over the wall to the designers with no interaction. And so a lot of the information got lost. And so the light documentation was a reaction to that. There are some environments, for example, where you're highly regulated, that you've got to have cost documentation. That's part of the cost of doing business. And it's interesting, in my project management book in 2009, I wrote up some guidelines for Agile documentation. And I wrote a post in LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago that talked about, that just presented those guidelines. And it got, 100,000 impressions on LinkedIn because people wanted to see what people thought about documentation back then, and that it wasn't no documentation. It was just documentation that followed certain guidelines. And so I think correcting this interpretations is an important part of going back to the basics.
All right, and according to you, Jim, how can we make Agile accessible to everyone or to a larger set of people and extend it to the newer domains?
Well, I think, again, there's a lot of instructors and teachers and consultants and courses out there that people can take, and I think that's a good starting point. I always say that capability, which is what you want a capability to do something, is a combination of knowledge. So you have to have some knowledge. So you go to these classes and you get some basic knowledge, or you read a book and you get some basic knowledge, or you go to the internet and you look at a few YouTube videos and you get some basic knowledge. But then you have to have an experience using it. So I think that's where some of the people fall down. Is people without a lot of experience teaching people that have no experience, and therefore you fixate on what I call prescriptive agility, which is an oxymoron. But I think that people sometimes don't get beyond that first stage because they haven't had any experience doing it. I've never tried to climb a serious mountain without some experience on some lesser mountains. That's just, you build up experience over time. And when you have enough experience, then you can make judgments about how to change the methodology or how to change the practice or how to do different things. So you need knowledge plus experience plus judgment, and that takes time to develop. So I think in going back to the basics, we want to just try to get people to understand that it is the basics, and let's interpret them the right way, and then let's move forward. I think the way you make it accessible is through all of the media kinds of things we've got today, and people need to take advantage of that. There's a lot of information out there, and unfortunately, sometimes getting the right information is a little difficult because there is so much. So one of the things that we need to do in our industry, actually in every industry, is we need to have a better mindset towards what I call sensing. What's out there in the world? What's worth learning? Who should we learn it from? For example, in artificial intelligence, there are now, as of one count, 63,000 artificial intelligence companies in the world. So which one do you go to? Which one of the 63,000 has got the right ideas, the right products? So just sensing where to go and what the intake is a big job, much less doing the actual acting. So if you want to look at your educational career over a lifetime, you need to be able to sense which things to get involved in, how to get involved in them, where to learn from. Then you've got to actually do it, and then you've got to learn from that doing. So that's a learning cycle that we've all got to get involved in.
All right, and if you can share some key mantras, Jim, to reimagine Agile in 2024, what it would be, please do share.
I wrote a LinkedIn post this last week that had a lot of activity. Then I said, if you failed at Agile, you will fail at artificial intelligence. And because I think artificial intelligence is going to change the landscape in ways we don't anticipate. Just think about social media in the year 2000. There wasn't much social media in the year 2000. By 2010, social media was really active. Could we have forecasted a Facebook or a Twitter or a TikTok in 2000 or 2005? Probably not. So we don't know where AI is going to take us. We just know it's going to be a big change. And so how do you adapt to changes? Well, you're agile, or you're adaptive, or you're flexible, or you're resilient. You've got to increase those skills and able to be ready for AI. And so I think that's one of the biggest issues that we're going to face in 2024 is how do we apply what we've known to a world in which we have artificial intelligence. In AI, I talk about the AI era rather than just AI, because there are things like quantum computing that's coming down the pipe. There are things that are here already, like Web3, blockchain, the metaverse, all of those kinds of things are immersive interfaces like you get in automated cars. So all of those things are going to change how we think about software development and the application of software development in those environments. So I think we're going to have to learn this, not just as software developers, we're going to have to learn as corporations and organizations how to adapt faster to the changes in the world.
All right, and that's very interesting how you said if you have failed at Agile, you are set to fail for AI. That's pretty interesting. So thank you very much, Jim. This was really insightful. The insights that you have shared with us. Thank you for those. And now we are moving on to the next section of this discussion, which is going to be a very quick rapid fire where we'll get to know you a little better, a little more on the personal ground. So are you ready for this?
Sure.
Okay, what's your favorite game?
I'm sorry, my favorite what?
What is your favorite game, Jim? Sport? Any games that you like? Do you have any favorite sport
No,
or any games?
yeah, football, American football.
Oh, that's great. And any favorite dessert of yours?
Anything chocolate.
Oh, that's nice. That's my favorite too. Is there any a person who inspires you a lot?
Well, one of the things I've been doing recently is writing articles about senior executives in the C-suite who I think are very agile and adaptive and who lead in an agile adaptive way. And so I've just written an article on Jeff Smith, who is he's currently a board member of several companies, but he was then a CIO at several big companies doing agile transformations. So Jeff Smith is the kind of senior executive I think we all would like to work for.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. And last book that you have read, and what did you like about it?
What did I like about?
The last book that you have read.
Oh, The Tiger and the Rabbit by Sandy Carter. And Sandy is a Silicon Valley high-tech executive who's well known in the tech community, and she wrote a book about the metaverse, Web3, blockchain, and and other things, and how all these things were coming down the pipe, and how we should deal with them. So it was a book by a high-tech executive about how to deal with some of these big changes in technology that are coming at us, in addition to AI.
Mm-hmm. All right. And my last question would be, if your life was a story, what would it be titled?
Actually, I'll show you the cover. It's A Lifetime of Adventure.
You already have
This is,
it.
this is actually a memoir I wrote for my grandkids, and it's
Uh-huh.
about a life of adventure.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Jim.
From both a personal standpoint in terms of activities and from a working standpoint in terms of careers. I think that adventure has always been something that I pursued. Doing things that were a little risky, but maybe not too risky.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing this with us, Jim. And I would like to conclude. We have touched upon various topics in this discussion, and I would like to conclude this discussion with one thing that you would like to suggest the agile practitioners should avoid during the organizational transformation.
I would avoid trying to be too static and be sure that I entered into it with a learning in a learning mode. I know a lot of consultants like me go into places and say, "This is what you ought to do," but we ought to do a lot more listening and I think adjust our own style and our own answers to meet the needs of the customer.
Thank you for sharing that, Jim. It was wonderful having you, and it was such a lovely discussion with you. We look forward to learning more and more from you, and look forward to speak to you as well in future. Thank you for taking out time for this discussion once again.